Today I was told that there isn't much states can do to stop these left-wing attacks on our country. One such attack is the lawlessness being pushed and imposed on the southern border, resulting in a humanitarian crisis. The states can't stop the damage being done to illegal aliens and our citizens alike. The best thing states can do is try to mitigate the damage. That got me to wondering, why? Why has a nation made up of 50 states, states that created the federal government, why have the states been rendered nearly powerless to stop Washington from harming our citizens? It's time to reassert the states' control over the federal government. That's what we propose in tonight's preamble. I received an email from a viewer whose son was fired last week from his job in New Mexico. He worked in the energy industry. He's just one of thousands upon thousands more who will be cast into the indignity of unemployment by a cold and unfeeling political party in control of Washington. The irony is that New Mexico pleaded with Joe Biden, or whoever's making the callous decisions there at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Democrat socialists in New Mexico begged Team Biden to relent on their anti-American energy policies, but the answer was no. It bears pointing out that New Mexico voted for Biden in the 2020 election, and now their hero is killing their economy. But that's a sacrifice New Mexico's left-wingers are willing to make. Sure, New Mexicans can no longer provide for their families, but Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and whoever's in charge of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue will never miss a meal and will be well taken care of. Liberal voters are happy to do this. Democrat voters are happy to sacrifice their own family's future to ensure that America's royalty, the Democrats, live opulent and excessive lifestyles. But what about the majority of us? What about the rest of the nation? We know this isn't how it's supposed to be. The 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which is under constant assault from big centralized government proponents, it states the following. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. This was our founding fathers' recognition that the bulk of the political power needed to rest in the states, with lawmakers who are not sheltered in faraway capitals, able to routinely ignore the needs of their constituents back home. The majority of Washington, they love the current arrangement. They live high on the hog off the fruits of the people's labor, and we, the people, are powerless to stop them. But as the GOP has retreated, I should say, in the face of an ever-aggressive and tyrannical minority in the Socialist Democrat Party, states' rights have been dwindled down and all but destroyed. That has left American citizens vulnerable to truly dumb and evil people. Take, for example, Tim Ryan. He's a socialist who was jubilant over the $2 trillion blue state bailout bill that Biden just signed. In a rare moment of honesty, Ryan revealed part of what this bill actually is.
One of the earlier speakers said, "This is the most dramatic change in labor law in 80 years. And I say, thank God. In the late 70s, a CEO made 35 times the worker. Today, it's 300 to 400 times the worker. And our friends on the other side running around with their hair on fire. Heaven forbid we pass something that's going to help the damn workers in the United States of America. Heaven forbid."
So, not a China virus bill, but a radical change in U.S. labor laws designed to give politicians control over businesses and how much businesses are forced to pay their workers. Remember, Congressman Ryan is part of a group of dolts who are incapable of balancing our nation's checkbook. He and his big government fat cats have piled $30 trillion of debt onto our great-grandchildren's backs. He's part of a legislative body that can't stop illegal aliens, guns, or drugs from pouring across our southern border. He's part of an organization that sat idly by while our citizens endured months of riots and attacks from left-wing extremists as they burned, looted, beat, and killed the constituents of those very lawmakers. But that same institution moved heaven and earth to protect themselves with a wall after a riot at the U.S. Capitol. And these people have the gall to tell entrepreneurs how they should run their businesses? My friends, The sad fact is, if a majority of Congress were put in charge of any business, that business would fail, just as the federal government is a failure at its most basic duties articulated under the Constitution. Congressman Ryan fully illustrates the incompetence of Congress.
We talk about pensions, you complain. We talk about the minimum wage increase, you complain. We talk about giving them the right to organize, you complain. But if we were passing a tax cut here, you'd be all getting in line to vote yes for it. Now stop talking about Dr. Seuss and start working with us on behalf of the American worker.
Congressman Ryan is very focused, but he's focused on taking power that's not granted him or any other member of Congress under our mutual compact, the Constitution. This didn't happen overnight. It's been a slow erosion of our rights and a slow consolidation of power in the hands of some of the most stupid people in our country, the Congress. According to the Washington Post, Congressman Tim Ryan, a Democrat socialist from Ohio, was arrested for public intoxication some years back. That's how much common sense Mr. Ryan has. In truth, Congressman Ryan doesn't have the brains God gave a soda biscuit. But he, and those who think like him, take power that isn't theirs. How? Members of the GOP are in on the scam. Men, and I use that term loosely, men like Adam Kinzinger like to attack conservatives like Marjorie Taylor Greene, or those who deliver conservative victories like President Trump. If some of you are alarmed by this little cabal in Washington, D.C., you should be. The good news is the aforementioned founding fathers, who were much smarter than Ryan and Kinzinger, they planned for this eventuality. They planned for a day when the federal government exceeded its constitutional mandates and grew beyond the consent of the governed. The founders created Article 5 to the U.S. Constitution. This part of the founding document allows us citizens who have been forgotten by the federal establishment to coordinate with our state lawmakers to propose amendments to the U.S. Constitution. This is 100% legal and 100% constitutional. Go to the Assembly of State Legislatures webpage and study up. We, the people, need to educate ourselves and make sure every state in our union participates in this convention of states. 34 states must pass resolutions in their legislatures to call a convention. Then we can amend the U.S. Constitution to correct course and rein in that majority of politicians in Washington, D.C. The amendments are needed because a majority of Washington now thinks they don't have to comply with the Constitution or the will of their own constituents. Amendments like term limits, a balanced budget amendment, or the repeal of the 17th Amendment are all mechanisms that will put Washington, D.C. on notice and return power to where it belongs, to the hands of the people. This is the last constitutional hope we have of turning the ship of state around. It's the last chance we have at making our government, once again, a government of, by, and for the people. In a letter to William Short, Thomas Jefferson was describing the difference between the elites and public servants of his day when he wrote, "The latter fear the people and wish to transfer all power to the higher classes of society. The former consider the people as the safest depository of power in the last resort. They cherish them, therefore, and wish to leave in them all the powers to the exercise of which they are competent."